Hello, everyone, and welcome to our monthly Introduction to Minnesota Paid Leave webinar. My name is Corinne, and I'm part of the engagement team for Minnesota Paid Leave, and I'll be facilitating today's webinar. We are so thrilled that so many of you can join us today. We have about 354 attendees and counting online with us right now. At today's presentation, we'll explain what Minnesota Paid Leave is and how it impacts both employers and employees. We'll talk about who is eligible to take paid leave, the two main types of leave, medical and family, what responsibilities employers have, and more. We also have a lot of information on the website, info.paidleave.mn.gov, including FAQ pages for employers and employees. And we'll be posting even more information on the website in coming weeks. I'll also note that today's slides are on the website as well. You can find them on our public events page. This webinar will be recorded for training purposes. Should we decide at a later date to make the recording public, a link will be posted on the website and all of our registrants will be notified. Additionally, we send out a monthly email about paid leave, which most of you signed up for when you registered for this webinar. But if you didn't, or if you're not sure if you did, you can always sign up on the website. You can find all the links I just mentioned in the chat. All right, so today we're joined by Kate Kunitz, Paid Leave's Chief Strategy Officer. We'll start with a presentation from Kate, followed by a Q&A session. For the Q&A session, you can submit your questions to us using the chat button. You can find the chat button at the top of your screen. It is a purple speech bubble with a question mark on it. There are two tabs in the chat, the Featured tab and the My Questions tab. Check the Featured tab to find announcements from our team and links we mentioned throughout the presentation. Use the My Questions tab to ask a question at any time during the presentation. Only you and the Paid Leave webinar team can see your question about the program. Other attendees cannot see your question. Our team behind the scenes will be reviewing and moderating the questions for the Q&A session. If you have a question about your unique individual circumstance, or if we don't get to your question, our contact center is ready to help you at any time. Just reach out to them through the form on the website, info.paidleave.mn.gov. 95% of questions are answered by the contact center within 2 business days. All right, that's enough from me. It's time for the presentation. I'll pass it to our presenter, Kate. Take it away, Kate.
Thanks, Corinne, and hello, everyone. I'm Kate, and it's so nice to be with you today to talk about Minnesota Paid Leave. Before we jump into details about the program, I wanted to say a few words about why paid leave matters. As a lifelong Minnesotan, one thing I love so much about this state is that Minnesota is a place where people take care of one another. Whether it's helping your neighbor dig out during a snowstorm or bringing them meals when they're sick, Minnesotans step up and take care of each other. Minnesota Paid Leave will support people during those moments when they need time to care for themselves or their loved ones. People will turn to paid leave during some of the biggest moments in their life. They could be very happy moments, like the birth of a child, or more challenging ones, like dealing with a serious medical condition. We have been talking with employers across the state for over a year now, and we know that employers care about their employees and want to support them during these big moments, and Minnesota Paid Leave will help them do that. Paid leave also has a lot of benefits for employers. It improves employee retention, morale, and performance. The bottom line is that Minnesota Paid Leave will help ensure employers can support their employees and that employees don't have to choose between financial stability and being there for their families during these big moments. So, what is Minnesota Paid Leave? Let's start with some basics. It's paid family and medical leave coverage for Minnesota workers. The Minnesota Paid Leave law, passed in 2023, was updated in 2024 and goes into effect January 1st, 2026. The law provides job protections and partial wage replacements payments to individuals who take leave for a qualifying condition, such as to bond with a new child or for medical care for themselves or for their loved ones. The program will be funded by premiums made up of contributions from employees and employers. The premiums go to the state and the state sends the benefit payments to the employee while they're on leave. Just as a side note, this is one of the differences between paid leave and earned sick and safe time. Unlike earned sick and safe time, paid leave payments will come from the state, not from employers. It's also worth noting that there will be a reduced premium for small businesses, so it'll be less expensive for them to participate in the program. This slide is paid leave on a single page. So the program is split into two major buckets, medical leave and family leave. Medical leave is exactly what it sounds like. It's time to care for oneself in the event of a serious healthcare diagnosis or condition. These are conditions that last at least 7 days. To be approved for medical leave, an employee must have certification from a healthcare provider that the leave is necessary. And again, you might be thinking, isn't this like earned sick and safe time or ESST? A key difference here is that ESST is used for day-to-day absences, while paid leave is really about long-term absences lasting at least 7 days. And that's medical leave. Family leave is a little bit broader, and there are 4 different types. Bonding leave is for welcoming a child to your home, whether that's through birth, adoption, or foster care. Active duty leave is when you need to support a family member who's on active duty or has been notified of an impending call to duty. Caring leave is to care for a loved one with their own serious healthcare condition. And safety leave is to support survivors of domestic abuse, sexual assault, or stalking for reasons such as to attend court appointments, seek medical care, or find safe housing. The program offers up to 12 weeks, or 3 months, of medical leave, or up to 12 weeks of family leave in a single benefit year. A benefit year starts on the first day of absence, so day 1 of someone's leave is day 1 of their benefit year. If you need both kinds of leave in the same benefit year, you could qualify for up to 20 weeks combined. This might look like 12 weeks of medical leave and 8 weeks of bonding leave. And again, certification is required in different forms for each of these types of leave. In terms of coverage, the program is very broad. It covers nearly every employer, regardless of business size, revenue, or number of employees. It covers nearly every employee, including full-time, part-time, temporary, and most seasonal workers. This slide calls attention to specific groups because we get a lot of questions about them. The green box shows employees that are covered by paid leave. There are a number of industries listed here that are not included in the unemployment insurance program, also known as UI, but are covered by the paid leave program. These include agriculture, religious organizations, and businesses with employed family members. So if you have been wondering about one of the groups listed in the green box, they are covered by paid leave. The purple box at bottom left shows employees who are not covered by paid leave, but who can opt in. Independent contractors, self-employed individuals, and tribal nations are not covered by the program, but again, they can opt in. And we will have more information in the coming months about this opt-in process. The box at the bottom right with the brown and orange header shows employees who are not covered by paid leave and cannot opt in. Because this is a state program, it only covers Minnesota employees. And the law defines a Minnesota employee through a localization test. That test has 2 parts. First, an employee must physically perform 50% or more of their work from a location in Minnesota. If they do, their work is local to Minnesota and they're covered. So that means anyone who spends a majority of their time seated in an office working physically from a location in Minnesota is covered. Second, for employees who do not work 50% or more of the year in any one state, it comes down to whether they live in Minnesota. So for example, if someone works a third of their time in Wisconsin, a third of their time in Minnesota, and a third of their time in Hawaii, their work is not localized anywhere. If they live in Minnesota, they are covered under paid leave. And if they don't, they're not covered. So the folks not listed here are those who perform more than 50% of their work in a state other than Minnesota, and those people are not covered. I know this can be a bit confusing, so we're going to talk through a few scenarios. In the first scenario, I have employees who work mostly in Wisconsin. Are they covered? Remember, it matters where their physical work or their work is physically performed, and if they perform 50% or more of their work in Wisconsin, the employee is not covered. Even if the employer is based in Minnesota, the employee works from home in Wisconsin, they're not covered. In scenario 2, my business is in North Dakota, but some of the people I hire live in Minnesota. Are they covered? The test relies on where the work is physically happening. So if they work in North Dakota 50% or more of the time, they are not covered. If they work in Minnesota at least 50% of the time, maybe as remote employees, they would be covered under the program. Okay, our last scenario. I'm a traveling salesperson and I do work across the entire Midwest. Am I covered? This depends on whether you spend at least 50% of your time working in any one state. If yes, and that state is Minnesota, you are covered. If it's Wisconsin, then you are not covered. And if you don't spend 50% of your time in any one state, you must live in Minnesota to be covered by paid leave. For all of these situations, employers should determine coverage based on this test and submit all wages for covered employees. I mentioned that the program has two main parts, partial wage replacements and job protections. Let's talk about how each works, starting with partial wage replacement. Partial wage replacements allow people to get financial help while they are on leave. Those payments will depend on a person's income. The lower the income, the higher percentage of wages are replaced, up to 90%. The higher the income, the lower percentage of wages are replaced, down to 55%. The maximum benefit amount is capped at the statewide average, which was $1,372 per week in 2024. And the average wage is set every year, so it can fluctuate year over year. The only requirement to qualify for partial wage replacement is that you must have earned at least 5.3% of the statewide average annual wage in the past year. So that means if in the previous year you earned at least that amount, currently $3,700, you would qualify for wage benefits under the program. So it's a fairly low barrier to qualify for partial wage replacement. Finally, there are payments that, if received during an absence, make someone ineligible for paid leave benefits, such as receiving unemployment insurance or workers' compensation. In addition to partial wage replacements, paid leave offers job protections. Those work a little differently. Job protection means that if an employee takes a leave under the program, they'll need to be restored to the same position or an equivalent position with the same pay, benefits, length of service, and seniority as they had prior to taking the leave. Paid leave job protections begin 90 days from the date of hire, but employees may have additional job protections under other state programs like Minnesota pregnancy and parental leave. So to recap, for partial wage replacements, there's an earnings threshold of about $3,781 in the last year. For job protections, there's a 10-year requirement of 90 days of employment. And that's a quick overview of the program. For the rest of the presentation, we want to touch on what it means to be an employer when paid leave goes live and how you can prepare today. These are some key dates for employers to be aware of. In the coming months of this year, equivalent plan applications open for employers. Employers will be able to apply for an employer exemption to offer a plan that is at least as generous as the state program. You can find more information about this on our website. By December 1st of 2025, employers need to notify their employees about paid leave benefits. Then in 2026, a lot happens. The program goes live on January 1st, and people can begin taking leave. Payroll deductions can start on the same day. The first quarterly premiums are due by April 30th, 2026. Small business assistance will become available in early 2026 as well. And we will go into detail more about each of these milestones. So what do employers have to do for paid leave? We think of the employer's role in 4 different buckets, starting at the top left. Reporting wages and submitting premiums to fund the program, educating and informing their employees about the program, supporting leave administration and coordination of benefits while somebody is out on leave, and working with us at the program to collaborate and improve the program over time. To determine if someone is eligible for paid leave payments, Minnesota employers need to report wage data for their employees. The paid leave program is using the same online reporting system as unemployment insurance, also known as UI, to reduce the administrative burden for employers. Wages will be reported once per quarter using the current UI wage detail reporting process and format. As of February 1 of this year, employers have reported wages for more than 3.4 million employees' records through the UI online portal, which is outstanding. If you are an employer and you are only now discovering this responsibility, don't panic. The UI Customer Service Center is available to help, and we have the information for that on the slide here. Starting January of 2026, the paid leave program will be funded much like healthcare premiums, split between employee and employer contributions. The combined premium rate will be 0.88%, which is the 4th lowest of state paid leave programs in terms of cost to employers and employees. The premium rate will be applied only to wages up to the Social Security cap, or $176,000. So for an employee making more than that in a year, premiums will not be collected on earnings above that amount. And just like the program is split into 2 major buckets, premiums are also split between family leave and medical leave. And each makes up a portion of the total premium. The medical leave portion is more because this is the most common use of paid leave. Starting January 1st, 2026, employers will be able to deduct up to 50% of premiums from employee paychecks. So basically, when it comes to splitting the premiums, employers cover 50% or more, and employees cover 50% or less. Employers may choose to pay more than their required portion for some or all of their employees. For small employers, their portion of the premium is reduced by 50%. Small employers are defined as those with 30 or fewer employees and an average employee wage of less than 150% of the statewide average, which is currently $107,016. The reduced employer premium does not change the amount owed by employees. To help make this easier to understand, let's look at some examples. This employer has 50 employees with an average wage of $70,000 and a total annual payroll of $3.5 million. That means in one quarter, the total premium due is $7,700. That's split in half between the employer and the total workforce. So for the average employee, that's $5.93 a week out of their paycheck. Now, what about a small employer? This employer has the same average employee wage, but a smaller workforce and a smaller total payroll. Here, you can see that the employer's contribution is reduced by half because they are a small employer. But that reduced employer premium does not mean employees pay more. The employee earning $70,000 still pays just $5.93 a week. So the same maximum amount for an employee, regardless of whether they work at a small employer or a large employer. If this is still not clear, don't worry. We've created an online calculator that will do the math for you. Employers can enter information about the number of employees and their wages and get an estimate of how much they and their employees will pay in premiums. Likewise, employees can use the calculator to get an estimate of how much will be taken out of their paycheck for the premium. Another way that paid leave is working to support small employers is through a small employer assistance program, which is funding that's earmarked for small businesses. On January 1st, 2026, we'll launch the Small Employer Assistance Grant Program to help employers offset the cost of hiring temporary workers or paying existing workers to cover for an employee who is out on leave. Employers who meet the definition of a small employer that we talked about on the previous slide can receive up to $3,000 per absence and up to $6,000 total in a year. Next, we'll talk about coordinating benefits while somebody is out on a qualifying leave. We recognize that paid leave doesn't exist on its own. We're going to be providing a lot of guidance on how these benefits coordinate with one another as we get closer to implementation. There are a few key ideas that we wanted to share today. The program allows employers to designate certain benefits as supplemental benefits. These can be used to make up the difference between partial and full wage replacement to top off an employee's wage. For example, if the state pays 2/3 of an employee's regular wage while they're on leave, PTO could be used to pay the remaining third and make the employee whole. An employer has the choice of whether to offer that benefit, and the employee has the choice of whether to accept it. Other payments received that are not supplemental benefits are generally considered offsets. Those are payments that reduce an applicant's benefit payment. For example, if an employee chooses to take a full sick day in the middle of their leave instead of their paid leave benefits, their benefit amount would be offset. As I mentioned, one key role for employers is telling their employees about paid leave. It's important for employees to know about the program at least 30 days before they start paying into it or can begin taking leave. That means employers must begin notifying their employees about the availability of paid leave on or before December 1st, 2025. There are 2 notification requirements for employers. The first is hanging a workforce poster in English and in any language spoken by 5 or more employees. This is similar to other wage and hour program requirements, such as workers' compensation and earned sick and safe time. Prior to December 1st, 2025, we will create this poster for employers to use, translate it into a variety of languages, and put it on the paid leave website for download. The second major notification requirement for December 1st, 2025 is for employers to notify each individual employee about the availability of benefits in their native language. To support employers in this, we will create a model notification letter in multiple languages, and we'll put that on our website too. This is also a great reason to sign up for our newsletter so that you know as soon as these are available. Finally, there are a lot of different ways to stay in touch with us, and we're dedicated to making sure employers and the public have the most up-to-date information possible. One way to keep in touch is to watch our website, paidleave.mn.gov. This is where we have frequently asked questions and toolkit of resources for employers, and we will continue to add new tools and resources. When we record webinars and events, we also post them here, as well as registrations for our upcoming public events. We also encourage you to sign up for our monthly newsletter for key updates on implementation, answers to questions that we're hearing, and new information as it becomes available. We recently launched a newsletter specifically focused on individuals and families, and our other newsletter will continue forward as an employer-focused resource. Lastly, we have a contact center ready to help you. You can submit your question on our website, and our contact center team will get back to you. This is a great way to ask questions that are very specific to your personal situation. We also wanted to share one last exciting update about the paid leave program. The paid leave law created a grant program for community-based groups to raise awareness and improve access to paid leave through outreach, education, and technical assistance for employees, employers, and self-employed individuals. The goals of these grants are to increase equitable awareness, understanding, and access to paid leave. Applications are due May 30th, and selected grantees will be announced this July. And you can visit our website for more information about these grants. And that's it for my presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, Kate. Again, today's slides are available on our website right now, info.paidleave.mn.gov. Now we can transition over to our Q&A session. Thanks so much to everyone who submitted a question. If you'd still like to submit a question, please do so. You can find the chat button at the top of the screen. It looks like a purple speech bubble with a question mark on it. A reminder that only you and our webinar team can see your question. Like I said, all of your questions are very important to us, and we will address as many as we can today, but there are quite a lot of them. So like I mentioned before, if we aren't able to get to your question, please know that our contact center is ready to help you via our online forum. Okay, I'll start off with a few common questions that we often get, because a lot of folks in the call are likely to have the same questions about the same topics. And then we'll get questions from the audience. Kate, what happens if you have a baby in late 2025 before paid leave goes into effect in 2026?
Yeah, a very common question that we've heard throughout this year. A person is eligible to take bonding leave within 12 months of welcoming a new child into their home through birth, adoption, or foster. So for someone giving birth in October 2025, that means they would be eligible to take leave with their child in 2026, as long as the leave is completed by the child's first birthday. Each parent is eligible for up to 12 weeks of bonding leave.
Can employers opt out or choose not to participate in paid leave?
Employers cannot opt out of paid leave. They can choose to offer an equivalent plan instead of participating in the state program. They can apply for an equivalent plan exemption for a plan that meets or exceeds the coverage offered by the state. Employers that are approved for an equivalent plan will not pay premiums to the state, but they do still have some obligations under the Minnesota paid leave law. Employers must still submit wage detail reports to the state each quarter and comply with the requirements to notify employees about coverage.
Thanks, Kate. Will an employer's premium rate increase if employees use paid leave?
No, Unlike unemployment insurance, rates are not tied to whether employees use the program.
How will paid leave work with PTO, sick time, or vacation time?
Yeah, employees may choose to take PTO, sick or vacation time, in lieu of leave. If they choose to do that, their benefit amount will be prorated for the days that they use PTO, sick or vacation time. And PTO can also be designated as a supplemental benefit by employers, in which case PTO can be used to top off the benefit payment to the employee while they are on leave.
Great. How will paid leave work with short-term disability plans?
States that have implemented paid leave programs, we have seen changes to the marketplace for insurance plans. Typically, insurance companies start offering equivalent plan options that meet or exceed the state's coverage. And additionally, they offer supplemental short-term disability programs that will make up the difference between paid leave and an employee's typical salary. In this case, paid leave is the first payer and short-term disability is the second payer. So for example, if paid leave replaces someone's wages at 66%, the short-term disability plan could then pay up to 33%.
Great. Do employees have to notify their employer about the intention to take leave?
Yes, employees are required to notify their employers up to 30 days before their leave or as soon as practicable in the event that the leave is unplanned. When employees apply for paid leave, they'll be asked if they have notified their employers and will be required to attest to the date and method that they used to notify their employer.
Great. What counts as a benefit year?
Yeah, under Minnesota paid leave, a benefit year starts the day that someone first takes leave under the statute. That means that that is the day their wage replacement rate will be calculated for the year. And it's also when their leave allotment begins, or when they can begin taking up to 12 weeks of medical or family leave, or 20 combined total within 1 year from that date.
In terms of coverage, are S-Corp owners covered by paid leave?
Great question. There is no explicit exclusion for S-Corp owners or operators under the paid leave law. And S-Corp's wage-taking shareholders are considered employees of the S-Corp. The S-Corp should set up a paid leave-only account on the UI website and report its shareholders' reasonable wages from their W-2s.
How long after applying with the state can an employee expect to learn if their application for leave was approved?
I would just say the fastest way to get an approval will be to come in with your employer on the same page as you about the leave. That said, our target time period for deciding claims is within 2 weeks from the application.
Great. So the next question is, can an employer make up the difference between partial and full wage replacement for an employee when they're out on leave?
Yes. So this is what we've been talking about with topping off. Employers will be able to designate certain paid benefits like paid time off or PTO, vacation or sick time, as supplemental benefits, which will allow employees to choose to receive up to their full salary continuation during their leave. The decision to offer supplemental benefits is completely up to the employer, and the decision to utilize them during a leave is completely up to the employee.
Thank you, Kate, for answering those common questions. Now we're going to transition over to the questions from today's audience. Thanks so much to everyone who submitted a question. If you'd still like to submit a question, please do so. You can find the chat button at the top of the screen. So the first question is the earnings threshold with the same employer or any employer? And a related question is, how will the state verify eligibility from a wage standpoint? How will the state confirm the employee has earned $3,700 in 2025 via multiple employers?
Yes, so the earnings threshold for paid leave travels with the person, so it's across employers. As to the related question, we are using that UI wage detail reporting for the initial wage reporting. As an applicant is going through the application flow, they will also, if they see missing wages, they'll have the opportunity to tell us that. And then I believe employers will also have an opportunity to verify.
From the employer dashboard. Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you. When will the systems be ready for employers to be able to apply for private plans or equivalent plans?
Very soon, yes, this summer. And we know there's a lot of interest in this topic. We are continually updating our information about this. I would also just add that the Department of Commerce, which is reviewing equivalent plans for certification to be able to be sold in Minnesota, is actively working through those, and that process is already in place.
Great, thank you. The next question is about coordinating benefits. If an employee chooses to use PTO instead of paid leave, how will the state know the employee is choosing that option? And how will the employer know the state has been notified?
Yeah, really good question. The employee is responsible for telling paid leave if they are choosing to use PTO instead of the paid leave benefit. And I believe employers will also have a chance to verify on that front too.
Great. Is there an exclusion for employees who earn less than $3,500 annually?
There's not an exclusion for employees who earn less than $3,500 annually.
So all employers will need to do wage detail reporting for their employees, even if they earn under the threshold.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Are premiums being collected for all employees on an employer's payroll, regardless of whether they're eligible for that benefit based on their work location? For example, if a Minnesota-based employee is teleworking more than 50% of their time in their Wisconsin home and they live in Wisconsin, they're not eligible for the paid leave benefits. But is the employer expected to pay a premium or do wage detail reporting for them?
If someone is teleworking more than 50% of their time in their Wisconsin home and they live in Wisconsin, you're correct, would not be eligible for the paid leave benefit, and also the employer would not be expected to pay a premium on their behalf.
Thank you. That's great clarification on the locality test. Okay, next question. How can a person with a higher salary determine the benefit that they will be eligible for, so they can determine whether it's worth it for them to use the benefit or to just continue working while caring for a sick family member?
Great question. So a person with a higher salary who would like to know the benefit they'll be eligible for, we are in the process of creating a benefits calculator that will help employees estimate how much of their wages will be replaced while they're on leave and what that payment would look like. To get notified when that's available, we really suggest that you sign up for the newsletter. That is something that we are actively working on now.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Kate. The next question is, if we're reporting wages through UI already, do we still need to file a separate wage detail report?
No, you don't. So if you're reporting wages through UI already, you don't need to do anything additional for UI reporting or paid leave reporting, as long as all of your employees are covered via UI. So if you have any of those special categories that we talked about earlier in the presentation, where you might have employees that would be covered under one program but not the other somehow, that's the only thing that you would need to worry about. The majority of employers that are participating in UI won't need to take any action for wage detail reporting.
That's great. Okay, the next question is one we hear pretty often. So it's about the payout. Can you please spend more time on the wage provision? All employees get 90% of their $1,370 per week. What is the exact calculation of what employees will be receiving in benefits.
Yeah, this is a really good clarification. I will try to do justice to it. Okay. Benefit payments depend on a person's income, and the lower the income, the higher percentage of wages are replaced, and that's up to a 90% cap. The higher the income, the lower percentage of wages are replaced, and that's down to a 55% floor. The maximum benefit amount is capped at the statewide average, which in 2024 was about $13.72 per week. And there's a calculator, there will be a calculator on our website where employees can enter their income and see how much their benefit payments would be, because the formula is going to look a little different for each person depending how much they make.
Great, that's really helpful, thank you. To be considered a small employer for the premium discount and the grant, is it the total number of employees or the number of employees in Minnesota?
That's a really good question. Corinne, check me on this. Is it Minnesota employees?
It's Minnesota employees, that's right.
Good.
So 30 or fewer employees in the state of Minnesota. This is another locality test question. We have employees working 100% of the time in Wisconsin and living in Minnesota. Are they covered? We also have employees working in Minnesota 100% of the time and living in Wisconsin 100% of the time.
Yeah, so with the localization test, that first category, employees working 100% of the time in Wisconsin and living in Minnesota, if they are doing 100% of their work in Wisconsin, they would not be covered. 50% of your work would be in Minnesota in that case. Are they, if we have employees working in Minnesota 100% of the time who live in Wisconsin, because they are working in Minnesota, physically in Minnesota 100% of the time, they would be covered.
Great, so even if they're living in Wisconsin, because they're working in the state of Minnesota, they are covered by the paid leave program.
Yes.
Are premium payments made quarterly?
Yes.
Or how often will people?
Yes, sorry. Premium payments are made quarterly.
Okay. If an employer's PTO policy is more generous than the policy, can they opt out of the state program? So if an employer has a PTO policy that is better and more generous than paid leave, can they opt out of the paid leave program?
This is a really good question. So we have this outlined on our website pretty clearly on the equivalent plan page, and I would recommend that people check out that page if they're looking for like the really thorough level of detail around what your program would need to hit. Generally, a PTO policy is not going to include the type of paid leave coverage and job protections that our state plan will have. That being said, I'll talk a little bit more about private plans and what that would look like. So a private plan would need to cover, you could split the program, right? It could either be all of the the medical leave or all of the paid leave or family leave categories or both. So it has to cover each of those different categories with the same generosity of benefits and how long a person can be out on leave, as well as the job protections. If a plan did meet that, you could either do a self-insured option, or you could purchase an insurance plan that would cover that. And so if it was something like your PTO policy, you would need to provide the evidence that it was equal or better than the state plan across all of those different areas. And also we have a self-insurance application process, as well as you would need to secure a surety bond.
Great. The next question is, are employers required to cover employees that have been terminated?
If someone no longer works for you, they are still covered under the Minnesota paid leave law, even post-termination for a number of weeks.
So they're still eligible for partial wage replacements?
Yes.
Okay, great. Similarly, what if my position is eliminated while I'm out on paid leave?
Yeah, this is a part of our statute where there are some stipulations. There are a lot of different situations where this might take place. Generally speaking, the job protections are going to help. In many cases, job protections will kick in and you can't be eliminated while you're on paid leave. However, if it was something like a planned layoff and your employer could show that it was a planned layoff that included your position and other positions like it potentially, then that is something that could potentially take place if it was a reduction in force that was planned. There may be some other situations that would fall under this as well.
Great. The next question is related to the small business premium discount. Kate, what is the percentage for small businesses if a large business is 0.88%?
0.66% with 0.22% paid by the employer and 0.44% paid by employees.
And I'll add that it's automatically calculated on our premium calculator on the website.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Yes, small business is included in the calculator, yes.
The next question is, we have summer help with our summer care program. They're generally college students and don't work during the school year. Are they going to be included in the wage detail reports that we need to submit?
Yes, they should be included in your wage detail reports. You generally, you can't assume, this is kind of the theory, I would say, you can't assume that the wages that you pay someone are the only wages that they may earn throughout the year, even on the understanding that you have that maybe they don't generally work during the school year. So because they are covered by the program in this type of employment, they may meet financial eligibility, and in that case, they would be able to take leave benefits. And so we need to count those wages.
Next question is, does an employee need to use the full 12 weeks of paid leave?
Well, I'm glad someone asked this because I think this is kind of a common misconception about paid leave. No, you do not need to use the full 12 weeks, and someone being out on leave might be out as little as 1 week or time during 1 week. Many people will not use the full 12 weeks of the benefit program because if you think about many of the situations where you may need leave, many of the medical issues that would qualify as a serious health condition, for instance, wouldn't require, a doctor wouldn't say that you needed to be out of your job and unable to work for a full 12 weeks. The other thing that I would talk about here, it's not always going to be continuous leaves. We have two leave types. One is continuous, where you take a full long block of leave all at once, or even a short block of leave all at once, but you take it all at once, you're out of work for a block of time. There's another type of leave that we call intermittent leave, where you're out either on a schedule or sporadically, depending on what your diagnosis is or what your personal situation is with the other leave types. And so no, oftentimes the majority of people are not going to use the full 12 weeks or the full 20 weeks within a benefit year.
Great. Does an employee have to use their earned sick and safe time prior to using paid leave?
No, not necessarily.
Okay, great. So for supplemental benefits, supplemental benefits are the difference between partial and full wage replacements paid for by the employer. Do employers have to report this to the state if we're doing this?
This is something that we would like employers to share with us, I think, yes.
Okay, great. The next question is again about intermittent leave. Can paid leave be taken intermittently, or does it have to be taken in blocks of time? And if so, what is the minimum block of time? Is it a week?
Yeah, this is a little bit of an expansion on what I was talking about prior. Yes, paid leave can be taken intermittently, and the minimum block of time is the minimum amount of time for you to take intermittently on leave is whatever is allowable as the minimum increment from your employer. So generally speaking, employers will have policies around what amount of time off you can take within a period. And so that is what sets the minimum. The other piece related to this, for paid leave, for you to be eligible for paid leave, right? You've got to be having a condition that lasts more than 7 days. So generally speaking, this is for serious illnesses or really serious situations across some of the other leave types, in order for it to be something that's a qualifying condition for paid leave. And again, certification required from a provider for whatever the leave type is. And generally for intermittent leave, the provider would also be saying if there's a reason for it to be intermittent leave and what that recommended schedule would be. That's something that's going to be very common across intermittent leave, is sort of a, why does this have to be taken the way that it's being taken? But one more thing that I would point out with this is bonding leave is going to be one of our most common leave types here. And bonding leave could be taken intermittently. So someone could potentially use that as a way to spend time with their new child and take care of them, where they wouldn't necessarily be out for one giant block of time, but could sort of specify times that they'd be caring for the child.
Great, thank you, Kate. The next question is there a waiting period between when someone is approved for leave and when they are paid the benefits?
There is a time that it will take for your application to work its way through the process. And so within that time, we do pay retroactively back, and that'll generally, and then even, yeah, beyond that, there could be, you know, if your application for some reason needed a request for information or somehow needed to take additional time to work through the process, that is something where at times we'd be able to retroactively pay benefits as well.
Great, thanks. This question is related to both locality and the small business definition, which we touched on earlier. Is an out-of-state employer with one remote employee in Minnesota considered a small employer in Minnesota?
Yes, an out-of-state employer with one remote employee in Minnesota, as long as they are working in Minnesota physically, would be considered a small employer in Minnesota.
Great. The next question is, how will employers know how much to supplement so they do not pay their employees more than 100%?
Yeah, this is a really good call out. So our Minnesota paid leave law actually does set the limit. Employees are not allowed to receive more than their normal wages while they are on paid leave from an employer. And the way that we will help employers know how much to do for that supplemental benefit is that we will share during the application process what that estimated benefit payment will be. So the state and the employer will communicate around that, and that's what will help them determine that level to supplement.
Great. Okay, the next question is related to bonding leave. If an employee goes out on bonding leave, can they take a total of 20 weeks?
Great question. Bonding leave, as one of our forms of family leave, right? Like that's the leave type umbrella that it's under, is a 12-week maximum in a benefit year. If someone is the birthing parent and they are also taking medical leave for that birth, they would be able to have both of those leaves together continuously or go from continuous or intermittent. That is something where someone could combine the two leave types, a medical leave for the birth as well as bonding leave, to be able to take a total of 20 weeks potentially. But even within that, the certification from their healthcare provider would have to specify that their medical leave was going to be that length of time. And that is up to the 20-week cap, right? So in a single benefit year, you get 12 weeks of either leave type or a combined maximum of 20. So if they were going to take the full 12 weeks of bonding, they could only take the 8 weeks of medical leave prior to that.
Great, thanks, Kate, for clarifying that. The next question is related to medical certification. What kind of proof or can be required for employees who are requesting leave?
Yeah, if you are applying for paid leave there are several kind of checkpoints through the process, right? So you initially, one of the things that we do is verify your identity. We also require certification from a healthcare provider. So that means you need to have seen a doctor or, a provider working in their scope of practice to determine how much leave that you need and kind of what your treatment plan is, or what your needs are related to time off from work. So why you can't work during that period of time. And that certification needs to come through to us, and then we would be able to adjudicate the claim. And there are checkpoints with employers throughout the application process. We also have some ways that we are able to flag things for potential fraud. And so there are several different proof points, I guess I would say, to ensure that the leave requests that we see are not some type of fraud, and that they are in fact real leave requests certified by a provider operating in their scope of practice.
Great. We can get through a couple more questions here. Can an employer choose which supplemental benefits they will allow to top off paid leave?
Yeah, a statute definitely talks about PTO as kind of the primary way that an employer may choose to top off. But there are also, we mentioned in the presentation, there are some other options, right? There's short-term disability. There might be other ways that you pay your employees that could also be acceptable as supplemental benefits. Yes, but it would need to fit within the designated category in the Minnesota paid leave law. And I do think that is something that we will make sure is clearly articulated in our employer materials.
Okay, the next question is, how does leave work when you work both a full-time job and a part-time job? Would you receive pay for both jobs?
This is a great question. You, as the applicant, need to tell us which jobs you are taking time off from. And again, that needs to be certified by a provider. And so if you are deciding to take off from one of your jobs and not the other, you would need still to go through that same certification process and then to report that to the state, as well as the employer from whom you're taking time off.
All right, I see it's almost 1 p.m. and I'd like to be respectful of everyone's time. We'd like to wrap up by asking for your feedback on today's webinar. We put up a QR code to a short survey. We'll put the link in the chat as well under the featured tab. The feedback survey only takes 1 to 2 minutes and will help us understand what worked well and what could be improved. As mentioned, if we did not get to your question today, please visit our website, where you can check out the FAQ pages for employers and employees. There's a lot of helpful information. And as always, our contact center is here and ready to help you with any questions you have. Just fill out the form on the website. As a final reminder, the slides from today's webinars are on our website as well, info.paidleave.mn.gov. All right, our time is coming to a close, and so we'll end it here. Thanks so much to everyone who joined us, and have a great rest of your day. Bye now.